What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the You Know Ball podcast. I am your host, Trill Bro Dude, and as you can hear, I hope it sounds better on your end. Sam and I got some new mics. We're stepping up the quality over here at You Know Ball. Let us know in the comments if you have any issues with the audio so that we can try to fix it on our end as well, because we're just getting used to it over here. So, Sam, what's going on? How was Oppenheimer?
It was pretty good. I really wanted to see, a movie about, wrestling with the effect you have on the world and sort of, the guilt of sort of how you're seeing communism, all of these themes. But unfortunately, Barbie was sold out, so I had to settle for Oppenheimer. Pretty good. I saw that a guy in another theater, every time Florence Pugh was topless, he took a picture with the flash on. So
nice. Kevin Rice.
Yeah. Kevin Rice. Shout out to Kevin Rice. Next time just leave the flash off. But yeah, awesome.
I think I saw you tag him. He's the first. Anytime I see anything related to Florence Pugh, I just think of it's a very strong part of Kevin Rice's brand at this point.
Yeah. So. And look, he's out here grinding. When he's married to Florence Pugh, they called him a madman. This is like his Oppenheimer.
Yep. Zach Braff weeps.
Kevin Rice has Zach Braff in hell right now.
All right. So let's pull up the Underdog. You could go on Underdog right now. Underdog Fantasy. Use the promo code SLOP. They support the program. As you can see here right now, they have a lot of things going on with Best Ball, which is basically their version of a season-long fantasy sports group that you can join. They have NFL on here with weekly winners. You can do a season-long. You can also do weekly winners with up to $3.5 million in prizes. Basically, you build a team for the season, and you can win throughout the course of the season. You can also win for the season on the whole. For NFL, you can also do NBA stuff now. They have just added NBA stuff. They have Best Ball for NFL. They have the double dribble for the NBA right now, and you can win up to $500,000 in prizes. First place wins $10,000. And it is only $10 to join. So I built a team last time. Go check out the last episode if you missed it. And I built a team for this upcoming season. We'll be building teams all throughout the offseason. We'll also be doing some NFL stuff. There's MLB stuff on there, WNBA, PGA. There's all sorts of stuff on Underdog. So if you've not joined already, use the promo code SLOP. That's SLOP to get a $100 deposit match. So you are ready to go for this upcoming NFL and NBA season. Supports the program. Would really appreciate it if you signed up.
Yeah, and now is the perfect time because when we start doing NFL picks later, I'll just dominate with picking the best quarterback in the NFL every time. That is right, Mac Jones. He's not bad. He's actually good. I'm just telling myself that right now. It's not. We're not going to go 5-11 again. It's not happening.
I was going to say new Kirk Cousins just dropped, but that might be offensive to Kirk Cousins.
Kirk Cousins is bad. To be honest. Yes. Kirk Cousins is like a fantasy god, the Vikings were great in close games last year. So, clutch. Does Kirk Cousins have the clutch gene? Is he Joe Flacco? Is Kirk Cousins elite?
It's totally plausible that Kirk Cousins is actually elite. And also, Patrick Mahomes called him the most underrated quarterback in the NFL yesterday. So if he's saying it, it's got to mean something.
Yeah, this is for those of you who don't know, Pat Mahomes is Jackson Mahomes' brother.
Yeah,
I might have to clarify that. For the more famous brother. So
Brittany Mahomes' husband.
Yeah, Brittany.
Just to clarify there, but so we are now in the middle of slop season. Drought continues. The sloppage. Damian Lillard has put a full slop. Honestly, the Miami Heat and the Portland Trailblazers have put a full stop on this offseason's slop. There really isn't much to add on that front. It seems like both teams are kind of at a stalemate right now, and we wait to hear what is actually going to happen. Our hero, Patriot Joe Cronin, is standing strong against the evil that is Pat Riley and the Miami Heat. So we support you. You have full support and just complete solidarity over here at the You Know Ball podcast, Joe Cronin. So in the meantime, we have to pick through the slop that is kind of more mysterious. James Harden posts on social media the other day, goes on Instagram. He says, "I've been comfortable my whole life. It's time to get uncomfortable," regarding his holdout with the Sixers right now. And obviously, Sam, you don't feel quite as much towards the James Harden situation since you are a Celtics fan, but I'm the most tired I've ever been in my entire life, to quote, "I think you should leave." It feels like this is going to be, when we were discussing this a few weeks ago on Twitter, I shared the John Cena versus The Rock when they fought in WrestleMania. And I said Daryl Morey's stubbornness versus James Harden's stubbornness. But Zach Lowe did point out, it's funny because Zach Lowe pointed this out on his podcast. He talked about it in an article. And he basically said, James Harden can't hold out in the same way that Ben Simmons did because he's entering the last year of his contract. And in the new CBA, if you are a upcoming free agent and you don't report to camp and you don't play the games, you are not abiding by your contract, and you actually can't even join free agency after the season, which is something I didn't know. He cannot become a free agent if he chooses to hold out. The issue with this is that James Harden, he's going to show up. And that's the thing that you don't want, really, if you're the Sixers, because most guys, you worry about them holding out. With James Harden, we know he's going to show up and he's going to probably wreck shit.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have the fat suit. You're going to have Ben had like a phone in his pocket. I would not be surprised to see James Harden, try out some different fantasy books. Like he's got a full collection of A Song of Ice and Fire that like falls out of his pocket when the smashed McDouble spin move tweet is going to be become a reality.
He's going to have a Nintendo Switch in his pocket playing Tears of the Kingdom.
Exactly. Yeah. He's just gonna, and he's not even gonna be able to cook, right? He's just gonna be like roasting apples. He's not even gonna be preparing any dishes at that point.
Well, he doesn't have internet. He doesn't have internet, so he can't look up any ways to advance in the game.
I mean, that would be. Can you imagine how hard Tears of the Kingdom would be without internet? Like you just have to like discover everything. Yuck. Yeah. Who does that these days?
Gross.
I gotta say, this is like very funny because like Clippers fans and Miami Heat fans are like behaving like identically online, where it's like, this is so annoying. We have all the leverage. You give him to us, and it's like, well, no, because it's so bad that it's better to just keep him. It's like, no, it's not, because everyone's gonna hate you. It's like, well, no, I don't think they will. It's literally never happened. There's never been any.
Also, can we just talk about leverage for a second? Because I'm not sure. Zach Lowe talked about this a little bit when he had Chris Herring on yesterday.
Oh.
I'm not sure if you caught that episode, but
I didn't know. But
basically, I'll sum up what Zach said about does Zach have like and I say this as I agree with you that the Heat and the Clippers fans are acting a bit like spoiled brats on social media, being like, well, why do we have to give up anything to acquire an all-star level player?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But having said that, I don't know. Zach seemingly has some sort of vendetta against the Clippers.
He's had one for like 2 years. It's like the same way Zach is like very gentle with like the Heat and the Raptors. He's like pointedly like against the Clippers, like taking digs about like their them like not playing players, it kind of gets lost in the sauce because a lot of people, like especially boomers, like clown the Clippers for like enabling load management, like kind of coming to the NBA, but which I do not think is like true. I don't know, like it just seems wild to like put that all at the feet of one franchise. But that's like definitely something that I've noticed, like the same way that like the Tim Bontemps like hated covering the Kyrie Irving Celtics, and like He was probably right to, but
Yeah.
it's like a very similar, like pointed. It's always funny when you can tell like which like talking head people, like media guys, like don't have ins and are just free to like go beast mode on teams. And the Clippers are definitely one of Zach's.
That's probably it. I would imagine it's some sort of access thing. It's probably part of the reason why he loves to bring up the Paul George trade story every chance that he gets.
Exactly. Yeah.
But on this episode, they basically did like, okay, why is this trade important for the Clippers? And why is this trade important for the Sixers? And Zach's perspective made it seem like, I mean, they did like 15 minutes to start the podcast on the Clippers. And like Zach's perspective was basically, you have these extension talks coming up with Kawhi Leonard. You already can extend. I'm sorry, Kawhi could be extended right now. Paul George could be extended in a few months. And he's basically saying that this is your chance to kind of salvage the situation. You know, as Chris Herring brought up, they've already tried the depth thing. And it's not even to say that that plan has failed, as he brought up. It's that if the main players aren't healthy, that plan is just never going to work. Because it, like, for example, we know James Harden has his playoff struggles, and we know that that has been an issue in the past, but like he also has games like games 1 and game 4 in the Clipper series that when your best player is out, I'm sorry, in the Celtics series, when your best player is out, you can have him basically carry you in one of those games in a way that, you know, Russell Westbrook kind of tried to, and at moments had almost did that against the Suns. But the idea behind trading for James Harden for them would essentially to give them not only insurance in terms of regular season and availability in that regard, but also in terms of, hey, if Kawhi Leonard is playing every other playoff game, even, it would be really nice to have a guy like James Harden who can shoulder part of the load and try to make things easier on Paul George as well. And honestly, I think a lot has been made of what the Clippers can offer, but like, I don't know. I like you said, like I think like until they are serious with their offers, like I jokingly, ironically love Terence Mann. I'm like, he's a star and played side. It's a bit like he's a good player, but like he's not changing your life. He's not changing your franchise. He's a 5th starter on most good teams. You know, maybe even a bench guy on like a really good team. And my whole point on this is that like they're kind of in a position where if they're willing to shell out the draft capital, which maybe even if they know that if they give Morey their best offer they can give him, which would essentially be like the guy Kobe Brown they just drafted, Terrence Mann, Nicholas Batum, Robert Covington, and you don't even take back the Marcus Morris contract. And you just give those guys plus the 2 first-round picks you can trade. Maybe they think that Morey's going to turn that down anyway, which is why they haven't even put it on the table yet. But my whole point on this is that, like, the Clippers have a situation where really, even in that trade, you're only giving up 2 rotation players, and you're replacing them with one of the 30 best players in the NBA.
Yeah.
And like
a guy who, like, even when he's missed some time is like one of the great Iron Men of like the last like 10 years, you know, like James Harden has probably had his roughest go in terms of availability over the last 2 years, but he still like plays more games than like Jimmy Butler, for example, and like a lot of these other guys. So that's always, you know, that's honestly the thing I worry about for the Sixers is kind of missing those games played, like from James Harden's perspective, you know, like especially with Embiid's health. So I don't know. It makes a lot of sense for the Clippers to do everything they can to get this done. Like even more so than like Miami. Like Miami lost 2 rotation players, but they're still kind of playing with house money. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not like they're still probably going to be back in the playoffs again.
Yeah, don't worry. Coach Bo's going to go into the backyard and just go dig into the earth and pull out a fucking guy that can play 25 minutes per game. I think that Max Strus and Gabe Vincent being lost is not really that big of a deal for the Heat.
I disagree a little bit because I think Gabe Vincent's actually like very good.
I think they're both good, to be fair. I think they're both good players. I just think that Miami has a history of just finding guys.
Yeah. I think they're more likely to find the Max Strus guy than they are the Gabe Vincent guy, because Gabe Vincent has like a real blend of like skill, like NBA levels, whereas like Max Strus is really just good at like two things, you know. Now, one of those things is extremely valuable, but
I'm writing this down. July 22nd at 10:20 a.m. Sam questioned Spo's ability to find a random role player that was undrafted and can play 30 minutes in the Eastern Conference Finals.
It's good. It's probably going to be a rough season for me as a Celtics fan. If my team is going to suck, I'm going absolute hater mode on the Miami Heat. This is like I'm putting all my eggs in this basket. So
I've seen you. You can act like you're being doomer still, but I've seen you starting to come around. I see Rob Williams working on his mid-range game. Kristaps Porzingis is going to be, floor spacer for Jason Tatum.
Can I tell you something? This is going to surprise everyone, but a lot of those are bits because I'm just sick of being yelled at by Celtics fans. I'm just gonna keep doing the pause. Yeah, just what we need. Rob Williams away from the rim. That's going to be awesome. I mean, it'll help like a little bit with spacing, but I just like I don't know. I would just rather have Rob Williams play with somebody who could throw him a lob, for example. I think would be more important. But
we're not going to derail this to talk about Marcus Smart, but I just want to say the more that you do those bits on the timeline, the more I understand the other perspective. I'll say that much. Like I get the idea behind like, okay, he loves to play with Rob, and I know that you always bring up the fact that Marcus Smart kind of maximizes Rob, but like he'll have that pick and roll big that he can work with Tatum, and then he's going to have even better spacing because basically everyone else in the rotation can shoot threes at a high clip. And that's something. Well, once again, while you said they're leading into Missoula ball, but I kind of think that like at least in the regular season that's going to be unstoppable.
Yeah, no, I think I think they're going to win like 57 games in the regular season and then lose in round 2 of the playoff. I feel like that's like the destiny of this team, but who knows? I mean, they can still make some moves. I mean, I can't believe that they're like really not going to add a ball handler because like everyone yelled at me after all that happened. It's like, well, Brad's not done yet, and it's like, okay, all right, I'll wait and see what Brad does. And what he did was trade back a billion times, and
it feels like Jordan everyone's kind of done. Like it feels like at least until the Dame thing. Like I want to put it in perspective. Last year when we were doing these streams during slop season, there were like 3 or 4 major trades that happened the week after free agency. And this year there was like those happened before free agency because of the new CBA and stuff. So like you had 2 or 3 really big moves, but like usually those moves come right after free agency. And if that is the case, then I would expect that at some point we'll get at least a minor amount of moves. I'm hoping that we get another bump at once the Damian Lillard trade does go through.
I think we have to because there's like some teams that have like 9 rostered players still. So like it really does feel like everyone's kind of waiting on the Dame trade and then to a lesser extent like the Harden trade to like open everything back up and have people kind of. I think everyone wants the information of like where on the board are the big pieces before they like decide like, okay, like is James Harden in the West now? Like, are we as an East team? Do we have like is this like a better chance or do we kind of like, punt on the season a little bit? If there's like one more team in the East, that's like probably going to be a top 4, top 3 seed,
I think that's the dilemma the Sixers are going through right now where like, they don't want to punt on the season, but also I think that once again, I'm just guessing. My whole thing has been, I think that Morey has been trying to hold out, hoping that we would get disgruntled star X that isn't Damian Lillard because Damian Lillard just wants to be in Miami. I think that he was hoping that a Zach LaVine or a Pascal Siakam or even a Paul George could
or even a Jaylen Brown.
Sure. Or Jaylen Brown.
Was still outside his extension.
Yes.
Apparently he's back from Europe. And we'll find it. We are going to, everyone's very optimistic. A deal will get done.
Oh, I heard that he was actually added to the U.S. team so that in a few weeks.
In a few weeks he's going out. Yeah, look, it's fine.
I'm leaving again. I'm leaving again. Goodbye.
I'm out of here. Bye.
But the reason I say this is that I think that Morey is hoping that a disgruntled star that maybe even someone we're not even thinking about, asks for a trade and puts the Sixers on his list. And then he goes, okay, now I can take whatever assets I can get from the Clippers, whether that's the guy they just drafted or future draft picks, and add whatever little stuff we have left as the Sixers and make this trade work. Now, the other wrinkle that comes into this is the latest report from Michael Scotto, who Michael Scotto isn't obviously Woj or Shams. I would say he's probably somewhere in just below the Jake Fisher, Chris Haynes tier of reporter, where like he gets mini slop. He gets like little tiny pieces of slop that are like, for example, Shake Milton's second year isn't guaranteed with the Minnesota Timberwolves. Like he gets little pieces of detail. So he definitely has some sources within the league. And he reported that, the Clippers are interested in PJ Tucker in these trades. Now, I don't know if this is coming from PJ's agent. I don't know if this is coming from Harden. I don't know if this is coming from the Sixers or the Clippers. I would imagine the Clippers wouldn't leak that because it doesn't really help them. But apparently they are interested in PJ Tucker. I think that would benefit the Sixers. I don't think the Sixers are leaking to Michael Scotto necessarily. But the reason I bring this up is because from the Sixers perspective, if you are making a James Harden trade, to me, it's almost a necessity that you get off the PJ Tucker contract.
Yeah. Those guys are a package. Yeah, I mean, like, I think they wanted to play together, right? Like, so I think
they're friendly. Yeah. They've wanted to play together again. Yeah. PJ is really, at this point in his career, is so limited offensively that if he is to stay on the Sixers, the fit just isn't there without an elite playmaker like James Harden. Like, here's a guy that's only going to, occasionally get offensive rebounds and stand in the corner and shoot threes. Like, he's not going to be involved in any sort of actions. He doesn't fit particularly well offensively with a guy like Joel Embiid, even in the regular season. And if you have that as the case, then I think that he has to be part of, and honestly, even with his age and his contract, if I think that the Clippers are going to have to give up Nicholas Batum and Robert Covington and Terence Mann, because I think that's like the starting point for a Daryl Morey package in this kind of trade. If that is the case, then I think that having PJ Tucker wouldn't be a bad thing for the Clippers. I think that the Clippers are going to need, like, weirdly enough, they've been the wing heavy team, but they're going to need another guy if they lose Batum and Covington, with Morris being essentially washed. Even if the Sixers take him back in a trade, he's completely washed. And at least you have someone, and this is something that teams talk about a lot. This is something that coaches talk about a lot, something that reporters talk about a lot. Teams don't want their best player, even if it's a guy like Kawhi, who wasn't quite where he was in terms of being a peak defender, but when he was like he's still a very good defender. You still don't want Kawhi guarding LeBron James. You still don't want Kawhi guarding Jason Tatum. You don't want him guarding guys that are big wing size guys that might get him into foul trouble, that could exhaust him. You want to keep him fresh for the offensive end. So guys like Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, while they might not be where they were a few years ago in terms of defense, you want to preserve them as much as possible. And as much as PJ can drive me crazy, PJ would certainly help keep those guys fresh. He's not going to be afraid to guard anyone. Now, physically, he might also be able to not guard guys like he used to be able to a few years ago, but he's at least going to give you an option that you can throw at an opposing team.
Right, exactly. And just, I think to the other thing here is that the Clippers have so much like PJ Tucker sized money of like contract. It's not something that's going to hurt you. Like Morey's going to be able to get what he wants in like turning PJ Tucker into like an expiring replacement level guy. So
exactly.
There's just like options there. So,
and this will show us if the Sixers do end up making the deal. I would hope it is. If Harden really is just so opposed to coming back, I would hope it's before the season so that it doesn't become the shit show that we've seen it become. I hope the Sixers get serious. I hope the Clippers get serious when it comes to discussing these deals, because one, I just think that continuity is more important than people bring on, and like figuring out who you are as a team over the course of a season is really important. And also, like, I don't know. Like we've seen this with the Sixers before. We've seen this with teams where they get a guy and they maximize. So, for example, a good example of this. I'll give you two examples. One, the Sixers with Seth Curry. Seth Curry was a bench role player who came to the Sixers and was one of the best players on the team. Probably at his peak, probably the third best player on the team. A really good player for them in the playoffs. An important piece next to Joel Embiid. He was maximized. A guy like Josh Richardson, who was involved in the Seth Curry trade, when he got traded to the Celtics, he shot like we just talked about this the other day. You and Matt were like, he actually was pretty good for the Celtics. He shot 55% from mid range. He shot close to 40% from three, and defensively was really good to the point where like his value was essentially getting back Derek White on a very good contract for a first round pick and a swap. And if you had said that a few months before that, that's a guy that probably doesn't get you back anything remotely positive in a trade, even if you include that.
I will say, like, the thing was, like, he was like Brogdon or Grant Williams, where like all the Celtics fans were like going like, I hate this guy, get this guy off the thing, because you know, like plus minuses would go in the toilet, obviously, when like one of your stars is coming off for like Josh Richardson, but he was like mostly fine, you know, and like I think with like compared to that, there's always guys like that where like everyone, because you got to have one guy who's on your team whose fault it is that your team is bad. For example, the Celtics have Malcolm Brogdon.
Yeah, the Sixers have Tobias Harris.
Yeah, exactly. So
it's all his fault. No one else's fault. But the reason I bring this up is because let's say the Sixers were to acquire Terence Mann in a trade like this Clippers trade. You're looking at a situation where, like, what if Terence Mann comes here and due to opportunity, because, by the way, the Sixers are going to really lack anyone who can have, like, it's not Terence Mann isn't like a high-level creator, but, like, if Terence Mann's points go from 8.8 points per game to 15 points per game, and he's still efficient, and he's giving you good defense, then you're talking about a guy that halfway through the season, you might be able to flip with some draft picks to get back a much better player. For example, like, Jeremy Grant, you could get back a guy that we've talked about the Sixers potentially targeting in the future. So my whole thing on this is like, I would like to see, because one of the things Daryl Morey always talks about is like, don't judge the team now, but like the large majority of teams going into from now until training camp and training camp until the trade deadline are staying the same. Like, yeah, you'll get the Donovan Mitchell trade randomly in September, and then sometimes you'll get a Kevin Durant or a Kyrie Irving or a James Harden trade in the middle of the season, but like, you can't depend on that. I think that you going into the season, you should look at it as an opportunity to showcase the players that you can get back in a trade, like a Terence Mann or a Nicholas Batum or whoever you can get back, maybe even a Kobe Brown, so that you can kind of strengthen the package that you could have to get back either high-level role players or stars. Because once again, we're talking about a situation like we talked about last time where Joel Embiid, the clock is ticking, and like he clearly doesn't want to do the gap year thing. I don't think anyone wants to do the gap year thing. And making this trade sooner rather than later, if the Clippers are serious and put an offer on the table, can kind of maximize whatever you can turn the team into between now and the trade deadline, because you can showcase some of the guys that you get back in a trade as well.
What's interesting though is like, I feel like if a deal were gonna get done, it probably would have gotten done by now. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think either team benefits from this dragging out. You know what I'm saying? So like, I feel like I do wonder if like James Harden does end up like a Clipper. I know that that's like what he's like says he wants, but like, I don't know. Just I feel like we see whenever a guy is like rumored to want to go somewhere and it like doesn't happen right away, it's pretty rare that like actually pans out. Like Paul George and Kawhi were supposed to be Lakers, like, and you know they did end up in LA, but like I don't know. I'm a little skeptical that this is how it goes. I mean, it sounds like Miami is like not being serious and is like trying to like apply pressure through the media, but I don't see the same like mind games going on like this James Harden Clippers side of the ball.
Well, I think it's what Chiodo talked about last episode, which is that like Morey goes to them and says, okay, I want Paul George. And then they say no. And then he says, okay, well then we're not doing a trade because he doesn't want to trade James Harden. Like,
Yeah.
he doesn't like. Once again, this is the difference between when we did last episode. We talked about the transactional, like we went through every single move Morey's made, and we're like, these are fine moves. Like these are fine, good moves. But like, there's a human element of this too, and that is where the calculator spreadsheet brain can start to kind of poison the minds of GMs and presidents of basketball operations like Morey, where like, yeah, he doesn't want to trade James Harden, so why would he even entertain any offers from the Clippers that aren't Paul George or Kawhi Leonard? And it's like, well, because it's probably for the best of the team that you make a reasonable move sometime this offseason so that you have an idea of what your team looks like going into the season, and then you can either change it before the trade deadline or you can try to change it next summer. And his whole thing is like, we're only doing it if we get back a championship level piece. And this is the exact same thing he did with Ben Simmons. And while the Ben Simmons move netted a all-star back, it also wasted half a season. It also made it so that that entire season was basically a wash, because by the time you even were able to acquire James Harden, you're doing chemistry on the fly. Those kind of moves never really work. Harden isn't fully healthy. Like, once again, there is a human element when it comes to all of this. And I think that, I'm not saying they should trade him for fucking Marcus Morris, but what I'm trying to say here is like, if you are reasonable with whatever you take back in a deal, even if you maximize the non-Kawhi Leonard, Paul George package, you're at least sending a message to the Sixers, to Joel Embiid, that you're trying to compete this year and keep your options open so that by the time, like, for example, like if they wait until November to do this deal, or they wait until, you can't trade those guys. Those guys are on your team.
Mm-hmm.
If you make the trade now, you can trade that. You can aggregate them in a trade before the trade deadline. Like if you're to trade for them, let's say Morey holds out like he always fucking does and does it in January. Well, unless you're just trading one guy from that trade, Marcus Morris, Nicholas Batum, whoever, you're not able to then turn around and aggregate those guys in a separate trade. Like you would have to figure that all out at the time. So like, once again, I don't think that they should rush it now. Like, I don't think you should make the trade today. I think you should be open to making a reasonable deal. And I think that by the time training camp comes around in September and we realize, oh, this isn't going to be tenable, then you can try to come to some sort of agreement with the Clippers. Now, once again, if the Clippers are just refusing to include Terence Mann or the draft picks, there's no deal to be made. And that you're better off just coming to an agreement with James Harden and just being like, stay at home, basically. But as we said, the problem is he's not going to stay at home, and he's going to try to actively ruin your season. I don't know what he's going to do this time, but
let's go. It's like that tweet, the fat suit's going to be talking to him like the Green Goblin suit. Not Spider-Man, like 1 and 2. Talking to Harvey.
Put it on. Someone brought this up in the Discord, and they were like, I love that we have a player on our team where all you have to do is say fat suit and everyone knows what that means.
Yeah, right. So sick.
It's such an absurd concept. So my friend texted me the other day a picture of Harden, because if you've seen Harden this offseason, he's living his best life. Let's say that much. He sent me a picture and he said, do you remember Jason Peters from the Eagles?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He said, Jason Peters looks great. Jason Peters was like 300.
Yeah. It's fine. It's fine. It'll be good. I mean, I will say the one thing you can say about Daryl Morey, you do have how will Daryl Morey wriggle his way out of this jam? Well, nevertheless,
nevertheless.
Yeah. So he does have that energy to him. So we'll see. But officially, it's got to be fun for you to just be living this like the second time. I would be going insane right now. More insane than I am right now. Yeah.
I've lost my mind with this, because it's like, I didn't think it was possible to happen again. Because my whole anticipation for this offseason was Harden was just going to walk, and then it would suck, and it would be like, oh, maybe we have to trade Embiid, but like at least our hands would be clean from the drama that comes with the Harden situation. And now it's like, oh no, we're actually going to have to string this out even longer because our GM is a sociopath. Well, one last thing I just want to say on this is that, and this is something that Francis Parker from Twitter, who's a great Twitter follow if you don't follow him already, Francis Zomes on Twitter has brought this up before, and it's essentially that when you're in trade talks, one of the things you can learn about teams is like who they're interested in. So for example, like in the midst of the Ben Simmons Harden stuff, the first time around when they almost traded Ben Simmons for Harden to Houston, the Sixers learned that the Nets really liked Ben Simmons. They had a trade that was going to send Ben Simmons to the Nets at the time, and the Nets were going to send back like Karis LeVert and draft picks or whatever to the Rockets. Mm-hmm. The reason I bring this up is because the Sixers might have some information about teams that are interested in players that are on the Sixers across the league. They might have inside information that we don't have, that like maybe there is a guy out there that is very close to asking out, or like we know is on the brink of, like, for example, Zach LaVine or something is like we know that something is going to change between now and the trade deadline or whatever. And that's the reason why Morey is holding on to Harden as long as he can, because then he can maximize that trade and flip him for whoever. But like, that's the only thing I will add to this, is that like teams do have more intel on, you know, what like, for example, the Toronto Raptors really like Terence Mann. I know that for a fact. Like, they tried to get him in the Fred VanVleet trade. They think that he'd probably be a good fit with their team, blah, blah, blah. Now, do they like him enough to trade him for plus draft picks for Pascal Siakam? And if that is the case, wouldn't the Clippers and the Raptors just do that trade and cut out the Sixers? Like sure. That's where it gets like, and like Will brought this up in the Discord too. He's like, well, if the Clippers wanted to make a trade for someone that extends their window and the Sixers want to try to get Zach LaVine out of this trade, why wouldn't the Clippers just cut out the Sixers and just trade for Zach LaVine and just trade Terence Mann and expiring contracts and 2 first-round picks for Zach LaVine?
Can I tell you why they wouldn't do that? Well, I mean, it's because of the injury concerns. I know Zach had a better, you know, I know Zach played way more games than, you know, he was great this year, but he does have the history of missing games. And I don't know if you want to add another guy like that versus like Harden's thing. Like, he is an Iron Man. I know that
he's played more games.
I was just going to say there's no full well that Zach LaVine played more games than James Harden did last year. But I just, in general, it's a better bet. I think, you know, even with James Harden aging, I think, to just given the history, you know what I'm saying? Like,
the reason why you don't trade for Zach LaVine if you are the Clippers is because this would be my only thing back that I would say to that. Yeah. If I'm the Clippers, and this is the Harden thing is my Hail Mary attempt to save the window, at least if everything goes wrong with this, I'm off the Harden contract in a year from now. And I can just kind of be like, look, we gave up everything we had to make this work. But like, I can trade Paul George and Kawhi Leonard a year from now and just kind of start over clean, right? If you trade for Zach LaVine and things go to shit, and, you know, maybe his knee injury that he had 9 months ago is more serious than we had originally known of, then you're stuck with him on the books for at least a few more years. And maybe they would just like to start clean. But then again, like, I don't know, like I'd probably go for the younger guy who is locked up under contract if I'm giving up real assets, if I'm the Clippers personally. The only reason I'm interested in the James Harden trade is because the fact that like we need a playmaker and we need someone who wants to be here and will play games. And like, I don't know, I think you could probably get the same from a Zach LaVine trade minus the playmaking element. But all right, that is the end of the free portion of this episode. If you would like to hear us talk about the rest of this episode, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Josh Harris buying the Washington Commanders, which I think is just a funny thing that happened. Also, Sam has something that he wants to talk about regarding Zach Lowe And then we're going to rank the young cores in the NBA using the tier maker thing, which we've never done before. So we're going to go through every NBA team and rank them based on their young cores in the tier maker machine, which we've never done before. And we're going to be doing that. This will probably be like a 2-hour long episode. So subscribe. Link is in the description if you have not signed up for the Uniball Patreon already.